So in this video, we're going to talk about the functional groups that you absolutely need to remember in organic chemistry, and then everything kind of builds itself as you go further along in organic chemistry. So the first one you should remember is whenever you have an R bonded to some sort of X. R is just any side chain, so it could be a phenyl group, it could be just an alkane, alkene. It doesn't matter, just some R group. But this is what we care about. This X here, where X is any halogen, right? And this could be chlorine, bromine, iodine. This is what's called an alkyl halide. Now, whenever you have a carbon-carbon double bond, all right, bonded to some sort of R group. As I said before, we don't care about the R group. This part of the molecule is what we care about. Whenever you have a carbon-carbon double bond, that's called an alkene. Now, whenever you have a some sort of carbon-carbon triple bond, right, this is what's called an alkyne. Right. Whenever you have some sort of O bonded to on some sort of R bonded to this OH group here, this is what's called an alcohol. Whenever you have some sort of R group, right, and these R groups are double bonded to an oxygen, this is what's called a ketone. Whenever you have some sort of R group bonded to an O in the middle, kind of sandwich in the middle, this is what's called an ester. Not an ester, but an ether. Getting ahead of myself there. All right, that's what's called an ether. Whenever you have an R group with an O, but this is not an R group. This is an H. This is an H. This is what's called an aldehyde. So notice the difference between ketones and aldehydes, right? You have some sort of R group that's bonded to double bonded sandwich. There's a double bonded oxygen, but there's also another R group, which could be anything. Here we have the R group, but the thing that's sandwiched in between is a hydrogen. The oxygen is sandwiched in between, but now the R group changes to a hydrogen. So, and that hydrogen has to be explicitly shown. So that's the difference between ketones and aldehydes. Whenever you have an R bonded to an SH, this is actually called a thiol. And this is something, put a star between, this is something you probably not, you might not have to remember in terms of organic chemistry 1. In Orgo 2, you guys will do a lot of reactions with thiols and sulfur, which is oxygen's cousins. Now, this is also a functional group. This is what's called an aromatic, or sometimes you'll see it written as arene. All right. So this, anytime, this is actually a benzene ring, but it's a functional group. So anytime you see this, it's an aromatic ring. Now, you could also have an R bonded to an NH2, and that's called an amine. Just something you gotta remember. You could also have, an R bonded to an O with a nitrogen sandwich in the middle and some sort of R prime with some sort of R double prime. Now this is what's called an amide. So notice the difference between amines and amides, right? It's just an R bonded to an NH2. Here, for this to consider an amide, we have to have this carbonyl group here adjacent to our nitrogen. So that's the difference between an amide and an amine. You could also have something, an oxygen double bond in the middle, an O bonded to an R group, and this is what's called an ester. Notice, so these are esters. So notice the difference between ester and ether. Ether looks something like this. Right, the O is just purely sandwiched in between the middle. In ester, you have the O that's sandwiched in between the middle, but this carbonyl group here is very important. So that's an ester. The last one that you really, this is not recommended to remember, but it's helpful. and it's some sort of R with an S sandwich in between the middle. And this is actually called a thiato ether, which just have which has everything to do with sulfur. So these are the, can't count how many, but these are the functional groups that's you absolutely need to remember for organic chemistry.